My dear brothers and sisters, after the proclamation of the promise of a coming Messiah in the Old Testament, there was this movement in Israel which was called the Messianic longing. It was the desire of Israel as a people, as a nation, to wait for their Savior. And since the time, God sent leaders and prophets in order to prepare the people Israel. And all Israelites during the time knew about this messianic longing. Their parents, their grandparents, and their children waited for the fulfillment of this promise. Inasmuch as the church leads us on a 40-day pilgrimage this Advent, the way God led the people Israel in a 40-year pilgrimage from the desert to the Holy Land, now the church gives us a guide, a voice, a message. And that is, the church introduces today, this Sunday, the character of John the Baptist as a guide and voice who will give us the message to prepare us the way God prepared His people, Israel. And what was the message? The message was the thing that we heard in our gospel for today. It came from the prophet Isaiah, like a voice crying out in the wilderness, saying, "Prepare ye the way of the Lord, for He is coming. Make straight His paths. Every valley should be filled, and every mountain and hill should be made low, and rough ways made smooth, and crooked ways straight." Who is Israel now? Israel at present is us. Israel at the moment is the church. And what is the message for us today, to the church and to us personally? The message did not change. It is the same, which was cried out by the prophet Isaiah thousands of years before Jesus was born. And during this time of waiting, thousands of years, and their parents and their grandparents and their children have died, and still they continued to long, to dream for the fulfillment of the promise. Suddenly, in the wilderness, there was a voice, and the people knew about it. It was taught to them, not just by the prophet Isaiah, but it was taught to them by their parents and their grandparents. And almost everyone knew about it in their heart, that one day the Messiah would come. But they did not know when. But surely He would come. Suddenly, in the stillness of the desert and in the dryness of the land, came the voice. The same message, almost the same voice as the prophet Isaiah they awaited for in the Old Testament, this time with the fresh voice of John the Baptist. And the message was the same. The Lord is coming, prepare ye the way. For all flesh shall see the salvation of God. This is our gospel for this Sunday. And what is this to us now? If we are the new Israel, the new people of God, and each one of us is a microcosm of Israel, what is the desert? The desert is no other than our hearts. In the stillness of our hearts, in the stillness of our minds, and in the barrenness of our situation during this pandemic, comes this voice of hope. The Lord is coming. And don't ever think that this message is just about Christmas. The Lord is coming, not just this December 25, but every moment of our life. He is coming. In fact, He has come already. So if He has come and if He is coming, then how do we prepare the desert? How do we prepare our hearts to remove all obstacles, everything that hinders our encounter with God? And what are these? Pride, anger, unforgiveness, hatred, different kinds of addictions, egoism, fake news, murder. These are the things that hinder us in welcoming Jesus in our midst. So what is our response on this message of John the Baptist? Let us not wait for Christmas. Let us not wait for New Year before we forgive those who have wronged us. Let us not forget for the coming year, in order for us to change our lives. The moment is now. Because Jesus comes to us in the Eucharist, in this place we call the Ambo, in the healing of Father Momoy, in our homes when we have our dinner tonight, in the ordinariness of our lives, He comes to us. And yet, we will not be able to meet Him in this encounter if our hearts have that blockage. If we ask a cardiologist, what makes a healthy heart? I think it is about a healthy lifestyle. I remember this because I just had my 2D echo very recently. And the cardiologist asked me, Father Vlad, how old are you? And I told him my age. And he said, wow, Father, you have a heart of 20-year-old. So I pat my shoulders. Wow, I have a heart of 20-year-old. And yet, my happiness during that, receiving that good news is also a responsibility to keep a healthy lifestyle. That I will not smoke. That I will not eat, foods that will block my arteries. That I will not make myself stressful. Because God has given me this heart. And I think If we look into our hearts as a nation, as a person, as individuals, what are the blockages that may hinder us in encountering God? Today, as we celebrate this second Sunday of Advent and welcome the message of John the Baptist, I think it's not just about receiving the good news, receiving and listening to the voice, but the challenge for each one of us is to reverberate this message to others, to be able to incarnate John the Baptist in our lives. Of course, we don't need to be holy. We don't need to become saints in order to become another John the Baptist. But this is who we are. In the good little things that we do, like what I shared this morning in the Mass. For the past 2 days, 2 weeks, I've been delivering these pink paroles around Albay, Legazpi, Daraga, and Tabaco, Bakakay. I post them, the photos on Facebook, because for me, it is a way of telling people we have hope for this country. It is shouting in silence the voice of John the Baptist through the simple little pink paroles. Hope for those people, those housewives, those 4-piece families who are making them. A renewed hope when to see them in homes lit at evenings. This is not just about me. Let's be creative in reverberating the voice and the message of hope for our people. John the Baptist is dead, but his voice is alive. And his message is as fresh as it was announced 2,000 years ago. Not just in this book that we read in the gospel for tonight, but in our lives, in our lifestyle. We can be new prophets. Don't mind about our sinfulness. We are all sinful. We are unworthy. And yet, God is telling us, speak up, prophets. I need somebody who is like John the Baptist. And who is this? It is us who will shout the same voice, the same message of hope for ourselves, for our people, for our nation, and for the world.